Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a threat that's not born from nature, but from, well, us. From our own progress. We're talking about man-made and technological disasters. From oil rigs to chemical plants, the very things that define our modern world carry some pretty big risks. And figuring out how to manage them, that's one of the most critical challenges we face.
So let's just dive right in and look at what's really at stake when the systems we build go wrong.
We build these incredible things, pushing the absolute limits of engineering. But sometimes they fail, and when they do, the results can be catastrophic. The Deepwater Horizon spill, this wasn't just some accident. It was a full-blown environmental catastrophe that absolutely devastated ecosystems and just shattered the economies all along the Gulf Coast. The effects are still being felt today.
But the environmental cost is one thing. The human cost? That can be on another level entirely. What you're looking at are the remains of the Union Carbide plant in Bhopal, India. Back in 1984, a gas leak here released 40 tons of a highly toxic chemical. Thousands died almost immediately. But the real tragedy is what came next. The Indian government says over 500,000 people were exposed, leaving so many with permanent disabilities and lifelong illnesses.
Okay, take a look at this number. $235 billion. That's billion with a B. That's the estimated economic cost just to recover from the Fukushima radiological emergency. And get this, that doesn't even count the 165,000 people who had to leave their homes. It just goes to show you the mind-boggling financial fallout from just one single technical disaster.
So, you might be thinking, okay, those are a few really bad examples. But here's the thing. This isn't about a few isolated accidents. As Mami Mizutori from the UN points out here, the data is pretty clear. And honestly, it's worrying. Since the 70s, these disasters have been happening more often, and they're causing way more damage. This is a systemic, growing problem.
All right, so if we're going to tackle this, we've got to be on the same page. We need to know exactly what we're talking about, because the terminology here is actually really key.
So first up, a man-made hazard. This is totally different from, say, a hurricane, right? Because it originates from our actions and our decisions. We're talking about things like industrial pollution, toxic spills, factory explosions. These aren't random acts of nature. They're direct consequences of the things we do.
And then you've got this fascinating and kind of scary category called a natech. This is where the natural world and our technological world collide. It's like a domino effect. The Fukushima disaster was the classic example. You had a massive earthquake and a tsunami, both natural events, which then triggered a catastrophic failure at the nuclear power plant, a technological disaster.
Right, so these disasters, they don't care about borders. They're a global problem, affecting countries rich and poor. So what's the world doing about it? Well, the good news is we're not just throwing up our hands. There's a coordinated global plan.
Back in 2015, something pretty important happened. UN member states got together and adopted what's known as the Sendai Framework. Now, this wasn't just another report to sit on a shelf. It represents a major shift in how we think about handling disasters of all kinds. And for the first time, it specifically includes the ones we create ourselves.
And this is the absolute key takeaway right here. For so long, the focus was on disaster response, cleaning up the mess after it happens. The Sendai Framework completely flips that script. It's all about managing risk, understanding the threats before they happen, and taking steps to prevent them from becoming disasters in the first place. It's about playing offense instead of defense.
And this isn't just some vague goal with no substance. The framework is built on 4 really clear priorities for action. You can think of it like a roadmap for countries to follow to build up their resilience from the ground up.
So let's break down that roadmap. It's really a 4-step strategy, and it makes a ton of sense. First, you have to understand the risk. What are the hazards? Who is vulnerable? Second, you need good governance to actually manage that risk. Third, you got to invest in reducing it, through better infrastructure or new policies. And finally, you have to be prepared to respond effectively, and this is huge, to build back better, so you don't find yourself in the same mess all over again.
Okay, so a big global framework is great, but how does that actually help people on the ground? How do we turn all these words into actions that can actually save lives and prevent damage?
Well, a huge part of the UN's guidance focuses on something they call no regrets actions. And I love that term. Basically, these are just smart, practical steps that make your community safer and stronger, whether or not a huge disaster ever actually strikes. They're just good ideas, period.
And we're not talking about reinventing the wheel here. This is stuff that just makes sense. It's about creating risk maps so you know where the hazardous industrial sites are located in relation to schools and hospitals. It's about actually enforcing building codes so things don't fall down. And it's about talking to communities and running evacuation drills so that everyone, and I mean everyone, knows exactly what to do when that siren goes off.
So, at the end of the day, what the Sendai Framework really tells us is something powerful. These risks are man-made, yes, but that means the solutions can be too. It's a reminder that our own progress doesn't have to lead to our own peril, but it's going to take foresight, it's going to take investment, and it's going to take all of us working together. Which really leaves us with a critical question. As our technology gets more and more powerful, what's our real challenge? Is it managing all its amazing potential, or is it managing its consequences?